Pet Sematary is a 1983 horror novel written by the legendary Stephen King. Having read The Shining a while back, which was great, and Salem's Lot, which was brilliant, I thought it was high time to add another King book to my collection. And it's difficult to choose. I mean, the guy has written so many books. Some of them are mammoth reads, some of them are pretty short. Pet Sematary was somewhere in the middle with about 300, 400 pages. And after giving it some thought, this is the one I went for. One of the main reasons being that this is one of the more famous King novels where I could go into completely blind because I knew nothing about it going in. And that made a terrific experience all the more better because I had just no idea what to expect. Some of the things that happened in the book floored me, and given that I didn't even know whether it was a supernatural horror or not, when things started to get really creepy, it really threw me. It felt like quite a chunky read. I don't know why, but for some reason, maybe it's because there's such few primary characters, but I always felt The Shining was quite a tight, lean read, with Salem's Lot being a lot more chunkier and comparable with Pet Sematary. And yet looking online, The Shining is the longest of the three, ever so slightly beating out Lot, with Pet Sematary significantly shorter. Weird, I don't know. Now, for its size, Pet Sematary has quite a simple story that could probably be told in maybe 150 pages. But as King fans will know, he likes to go off in tangents, he dedicates paragraphs and paragraphs to unnecessary things, and he has quite a wonderful, flowery way of putting things. And that's something I really like about his books. I get that it's going to be take it or leave it with some people, especially those who are reading because of the plot, but with King, the phrase "the journey and not the end" has never been more appropriate. It's more his fantastic prose and writing style that makes his books, not the story itself, and it's the same here. So, in Pet Sematary, we follow a doctor called Lewis Creed, who along with his wife and 2 children move to a large house near the small town of Ludlow when he gets a new job. Ellie is 8, if I remember correctly, and Gage is 2, and along with them comes Church, the much-loved family cat. As soon as they get to their new home, trouble manifests. Ellie hurts her knee, Gage gets stung by a bee, these kind of things. Lewis even has to deal with the death of a young man on his first day on his new job. The family is helped by their new neighbour, Jude Cranhall, and he warns the couple about the highway that bridges their 2 homes, which is frequented by speeding trucks and has claimed the lives of many family pets. Jude becomes close to the family, and he takes them on a trip in the woods behind the Creeds' new home, and there he shows them Pet Sematary, which is quite literally a pet cemetery where people in the town for who knows how long have come here to bury their dead animals, cats, dogs, heck, even a bull. This provokes a heated argument between Lewis and his wife Rachel, the latter of whom has severe psychological issues after witnessing the death of her disease-ridden elder sister during her youth. Rachel does not want the topic of death discussed and fears the effect it might have on the couple's young daughter, who's taken a keen interest in the topic and becomes fearful and apprehensive that at any moment anyone could die. And that's really what the book is about in a way. It's all about death, discussing death, accepting death as an inevitable reality. All the events and themes of the book are pulled together by that single word, death. Eventually, death comes to the Creed's door when, during a holiday period where Rachel and the kids are at her parents' place in Chicago, Church is run over in the road. Distraught at the thought of what his daughter's reaction would be, Lewis does not tell her over the phone, and then Jude takes Lewis and takes him on a trip to bury Church somewhere past the Pet Sematary, somewhere Jude refers to as the real cemetery. And the day after Church is buried, incredibly, he returns, only there is something not quite right with him anymore. As with a lot of King books, Pet Sematary is deeply personal to him, as he was literally living where the characters do in the book. He was living near a major road where cats and dogs were often killed by trucks. His daughter's cat was killed by a truck, and he had to explain to her the concept of death and subsequently buried the cat. He played with these ideas in his head, and they formed the basis for Pet Sematary, which King considers to be his scariest novel. I also heard that his son nearly ran into the road, and he was inches away from being hit by a truck when King managed to pull him back off the road. Again, a similar event occurs in the book, and, well, let's just say Lewis isn't as lucky. You know, I often hear people who read books say that they were so frightened by them that they had to put down the book or they struggled to continue reading, that the hair on their back stood on end and they were scared shitless. I've never experienced that with a book, at least not that I can remember. Movies, yeah, and even video games, with some games like Alien Isolation. But I can safely say that Pet Sematary scared the shit out of me. It was the first book that really got me. There were passages of this that made me ice cold when it was a cool day. There were passages that made me want to go upstairs to my family when I was downstairs on my own at night reading. And it wasn't just scary, it was so sad. It made me tear up, and that's no joke. And of course, those who have read the book will no doubt know why when I tell you that when I read this, I had 2 kids, and my son was 2 years old. It made me want to hug him, squeeze him tight, and never let go. And the way King is able to capture grief in the novel is incredible. It feels so raw, so authentic, so real. It was spellbinding stuff. I know I've only read 3 of King's books so far, but I definitely take his word for it when he says this is the one that scared him the most. You and me both, pal. I couldn't take my eyes off the page, and yet I was dreading knowing what was coming. And the book knows you know what's coming, and it's almost as if it's playing with you, toying with you, like Church having fun with one of the mice he's caught before he rips it to pieces. The suspense and horror in this book is so paramount that on one winter's afternoon, if you stepped into my day job office, you'd find a man who was getting email after email, phone call after phone call, but his head was down and staring intently at a book with a cat on the cover. And when I say horror, yes, there is blood and guts and things that go bump in the night, but the real terror of Pet Sematary lies in just that. Real stuff. Death, grief, loss, acceptance, or the lack of it. It's a book with a slow build-up that builds to a gut-wrenching final act and a horrifying climax. Definitely the best of the 3 King novels I've read so far, and a deeply emotional, ghastly but satisfying experience. Thanks for watching.